Settle in. Get comfortable. Sometimes the smartest thing two people can do is pretend. And sometimes the dumbest thing they can do is believe their own performance. Chapter 1. The Arrangement. The fourth suitor arrived with flowers, which was an improvement over the third suitor who had arrived with a genealogical chart. Darcy Locke sat at her mother's dining table with her hands folded in her lap and her smile fixed at the precise angle that said, "I am being polite," rather than "I am enjoying this," and watched Aldous Pemberton explain his family's bloodline using the butter knife as a pointer. He was a perfectly nice man. He had clean fingernails and good posture, and a wolf that, based on the way he kept tilting his head and sniffing the centerpiece, was deeply interested in the hydrangeas. "The Pemberton line," he said, tapping the butter knife against the table, "extends back 14 generations to the founding of the Northern Reach." "How wonderful," Darcy's mother said, in the voice she used when she was already mentally planning the engagement party. Darcy's smile held. It was a practiced thing, years of practice, the kind that comes from being the alpha king's sister in a pack where younger sister meant political opportunity dressed in a nice cardigan. She'd been presented with 7 suitors in 5 months, each one pre-approved, each one somebody's son, somebody's ally, somebody's idea of a strategic match. Not one of them had asked what she did for a living. Not one of them had noticed that her left hand was ink-stained from the press shop, or that she smelled like turpentine and rosemary, or that she was staring at the butter knife with the expression of a woman considering homicide. "He's still talking," Bramble observed. Bramble was Darcy's wolf, and Bramble was a problem. Not the violent kind, the smug kind. The kind of wolf that watched everything from the comfortable position of already knowing how it would end, and found the human's refusal to see the obvious deeply, specifically entertaining. 14 generations, Bramble said. Riveting. Ask him if any of them were interesting. Darcy didn't ask. She sat through the soup course and the bread course, and the part where Aldous explained the structural differences between Northern and Southern pack governance. And when he finally left, 2 hours and 47 minutes after arriving, not that she was counting, she turned to her mother and said, very calmly, "No more." "Darcy, I'm seeing someone." The words came out before the plan existed. They arrived the way all of Darcy's best and worst decisions arrived, fully formed, structurally unsound, and impossible to take back. Her mother went still. The particular kind of still that meant not shocked, but calculating. Who? Someone. A person. A male person with a name and a face and a wolf, and absolutely no genealogical charts. What's his name? Darcy opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Say it," Bramble said, not helping, just watching with the satisfied attention of a wolf who had been waiting for this exact moment since puberty. "Grant," Darcy said. "Grant Mercer." Her mother's expression changed. Not surprise, recognition. Something close to triumph, quickly managed. "Marcus's friend Grant?" "Yes." "The one who's been coming to family dinners since he was 19? "Yes." "The one who has been looking at you across rooms with the expression of a man who has been hit by a very slow-moving bus?" Darcy blinked. That's not, he's my brother's best friend." "He absolutely does," Bramble said. "The bus metaphor is generous. It's more of a glacier. Relentless. Visible from space. He's been crushed by it for years, and everyone can see it except you." Her mother stood up, smoothed her dress. "I'll tell Marcus. Dinner Friday. Bring Grant." And she left the room with the satisfied efficiency of a woman whose long game had just arrived. Darcy sat alone at the table with the hydrangeas and the abandoned butter knife, and the dawning understanding that she had just committed to a lie that required the cooperation of a man who would probably say no, and if he said yes, would require her to stand near him in social settings and pretend to be his girlfriend, while also pretending that she had not been quietly, specifically, stubbornly in love with him since she was 17 years old. "This," Bramble said, with the satisfaction of a wolf who has just been proven right about everything, "is going to be wonderful." Grant Mercer was in the press shop, reorganizing the type trays she'd left in chaos when she told him. He was always reorganizing her type trays. This was one of approximately 30 things Grant did that she had cataloged, filed, and refused to examine. He brought her coffee on Wednesdays. He fixed the shop's back door without being asked. He showed up at her letterpress demonstrations and stood in the back and watched her ink her hands, and never once said anything about how she looked doing it, which was somehow worse than if he had, because the silence occupied more space than words would have. He was tall, not dramatically, functionally. The kind of tall that meant he could reach the high shelves and she could not, and when he reached them for her, his shirt pulled across his shoulders in a way that she had absolutely not noticed and was not noticing now. "I need a favor," she said. "The R tray is backwards." "I know the R tray is backwards. I did that on purpose. There's a system." "It's backwards." "Grant, I need you to be my boyfriend." He stopped. His hands were in the tray, long hands, careful hands, the hands of a man who fixed things without being asked and never drew attention to the fixing. He looked at her. His face did the thing it always did when she surprised him, which was nothing. Grant's face was a masterwork of composure. He had a mode. She thought of it as his Marcus mode, the one he used around her brother and the pack, the steady, reliable, best friend mode that gave nothing away and asked for nothing and occupied the exact amount of space he'd been allocated and not a centimeter more. But his eyes were gray, the gray of river stones, and for 1/2 second they went very wide and very still, and the gray shifted toward something warmer at the edges, and she saw it, a flash of amber, there and gone, the wolf surfacing before the man could stop it. "Your boyfriend," he said. "Fake boyfriend, 1 month. My mother has been sending approved suitors to dinner and I told her I was seeing someone. And I said your name because it was the first name I could think of, and now there's a dinner on Friday. And I need you to come and hold my hand and look at me the way you—" She stopped. She'd been about to say, "the way you look at me sometimes when you think I'm not paying attention." She caught it, rerouted. "The way a boyfriend would look at someone, at dinner, in front of my family." Grant looked at her. She could feel him processing, not the request, which was simple, but something underneath it, something that moved across his face like weather across a lake and disappeared before she could name it. "She asked us," Karen said. Karen was Grant's wolf, and Karen was the opposite of Bramble in every way that mattered. Where Bramble was smug and performative, Karen was quiet, earnest in a way that bordered on painful, the kind of wolf that said one true thing per hour and meant it with his entire body, and then went back to being very, very still. "She asked us," Karen said again, not excited, not panicked, just stating a fact with the gravity of someone reporting a natural disaster. "She asked us." 1 month, Grant said. 1 month. Dinners, maybe a pack event or two. We hold hands, we sit close, we convince my mother to stop sending butter knife genealogists to court me. Then it's over and everything goes back to normal. "Nothing is going back to normal," Karen said. "Nothing has been normal since we were 22. This is the least normal thing that has ever happened. And you are going to say yes because you have been waiting for any excuse to be near her, and this is the excuse, and it is here." "Okay," Grant said. "And I am not going to survive it." "Okay? I'll do it. Friday dinner. 1 month." He went back to the type trays. His hands were steady, his face was composed. His voice was even and measured and completely, entirely under control. His heartbeat, which Darcy could hear because she was a wolf and wolves hear everything, was running at approximately twice its normal rate. He said yes, Bramble said, with the deep satisfaction of a wolf who has been right about everything since the beginning. He said yes in under 4 seconds. That is not the response time of a man doing a favor. That is the response time of a man who has been rehearsing this moment in the shower. Darcy ignored her wolf. She ignored the heartbeat. She ignored the amber flash she'd seen in his eyes and the way his hands had gone still on the R tray and the quality of his okay, which had been too fast and too quiet and too much like a man who'd been given exactly what he wanted and was terrified of it. "Great," she said. "Friday. I'll pick you up at 7. She left the shop. The door closed behind her. Grant stood with his hands in the type tray and his wolf saying hers, 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 like a metronome, and he did not move for a long time. Chapter 2. The First Dinner. Friday arrived with the gravitational inevitability of a verdict. Darcy had changed 3 times. She was not a person who changed 3 times. She was a person who wore ink-stained cardigans and practical boots and kept her dark hair in whatever configuration required the least number of decisions. And yet here she was, standing in front of a mirror at 6:45 in a green dress she hadn't worn in 2 years, asking her wolf whether her hair looked better up or down. "Down," Bramble said. "He likes your hair down. He looked at it for 11 seconds at the pack bonfire in March. I counted." "You counted." "I always count. It's my job. My job is to pay attention to the things you refuse to pay attention to, and what I have noticed is that Grant Mercer has looked at your hair, your hands, your mouth, and the ink stain on your left ring finger on a combined total of, stop counting, 412 occasions across 6 years, which averages to approximately, Bramble, once every 5.3 days. He's consistent. I admire consistency." She left her hair down. Grant arrived at 7. He was wearing a dark sweater she'd never seen, charcoal, the kind that fit close and made his shoulders look like a structural engineering problem. And his hair was slightly damp, which meant he'd showered, which meant he'd prepared, which meant this was not a casual favor, and both of them knew it, and neither of them was going to say it. He looked at her, the green dress, the hair down. His eyes did the thing, gray, then warmer, then the amber flash at the edges, quick and managed, like a match struck and shaken out. "You look—" He stopped, recalibrated. "The dress is good." "Thank you. The sweater is adequate." Something almost happened to his mouth. Not a smile. Grant didn't do smiles easily, but the architecture of one, the foundation and the load-bearing wall, assembled and then not built. "Adequate," Karen said. She said adequate. "She is looking at your shoulders. She has been looking at your shoulders for 4 seconds. I am going to die. We are going to die. This is how we die." They drove to the lock house. The drive took 12 minutes. They did not touch. They did not need to. The car was small, and his scent was everywhere. Cedar and clean wool, and something underneath that she'd been cataloging for years without admitting she was cataloging it, the way she cataloged typefaces. By feel, by the weight of each letter on the page. Marcus opened the front door before they knocked. He was grinning. Not the alpha grin, the brother grin, the one that was too wide and too knowing and made Darcy want to throw things. "Grant," Marcus said, with the enthusiasm of a man who had been waiting for exactly this. Come in, come in. We set an extra place. We set a very specific extra place." "Marcus," Darcy said, "don't." "Don't what? I'm welcoming my sister's boyfriend, who is also my best friend, who has been coming to this house since he was 19, who I have personally watched, Marcus, pine. He hasn't been pining. with the quiet, dignified suffering of a man who knows exactly what he wants and has been too polite to take it. Grant stood in the doorway. His face was the composed mask, the Marcus mode. Steady, reliable, the best friend who would never cross a line. But Darcy was close enough to see the muscle at his jaw tighten, and the deliberate way he uncurled his hands at his sides, and the amber at the edges of his eyes that he could not, for the life of him, hide. "Evening, Marcus," Grant said, measured, calm, exactly the amount of warmth a man would show when greeting his best friend's family as a guest, not as a potential mate, not as a man who had been thinking about this dinner since Tuesday, with the concentration of someone preparing for a military campaign. "Calm," Karen observed. "We are being very calm. Our heart rate suggests otherwise. Our heart rate suggests we are having a medical event." The dinner was a disaster. Not the bad kind, the too good kind. Their mother had made roast lamb, which she only made for occasions, and she'd set the table with the good plates, which she only used for occasions, and she'd seated Grant next to Darcy, with their chairs approximately 4 inches closer than standard dining configuration allowed. Darcy's elbow kept brushing his. Every time it did, a small electrical event occurred at the point of contact and traveled the length of her arm and settled somewhere in her sternum, and she pretended it was the lamb. Grant was good at this, devastatingly good. He talked to her mother about the pack's border logistics with the quiet competence of a man who had been handling pack operations as Marcus's second for years. He complimented the food without overperforming it. A single line, specific, about the rosemary on the lamb, which was the kind of compliment that landed because it proved he'd been paying attention. He refilled Darcy's water glass without being asked, the way he always did, the way he did everything, without announcement, without expectation, as if the act of caring for her was simply part of his operating system and had been running in the background for so long he no longer noticed it. At one point, she laughed at something Marcus said, and Grant's head turned toward the sound. Not his whole body, just his head, the tilt of it, the way a wolf's ears track movement before the rest of it follows. The motion was too precise and too involuntary to be human. Her mother saw it. Darcy saw her mother see it. Her mother's expression didn't change, but she reached for the wine bottle with the calm satisfaction of a woman whose hypothesis had just been confirmed experimentally. "So," her mother said, with the precision of a surgeon opening a chest cavity, "how long has this been going on?" Darcy opened her mouth. Grant spoke first. "A while." Simple, true if you tilted it. He looked at Darcy, and for one beat the mask shifted. Not a crack, a window. Something warm and direct and stripped of every layer of composure. He looked at her the way a man looks at someone when he has stopped pretending he isn't looking. Her heart did a thing she was not going to name. "That was not fake," Bramble said. "That was the least fake thing I have ever seen. That was so real it has a pulse. I want it noted for the record that your fake boyfriend just looked at you with the unmistakable weight of a man who means it, and you are sitting there pretending it's about the lamb." "A while," Darcy confirmed. Her voice was steady. Her hands under the table were not. Marcus beamed. Her mother began planning Thursday dinners. The pack's beta council, somehow already informed, sent a fruit basket before dessert. After dinner, Grant helped clear the table. He stood at the kitchen sink with his sleeves rolled up and his forearms doing the thing forearms do when a man is washing dishes with focused domestic competence, and Darcy stood beside him with a dish towel, and their hips were 6 inches apart, and neither of them closed the gap, and neither of them needed to, because the gap was doing more work than contact ever could. He handed her a plate. Their fingers touched. She went still. Not the human kind of still, the other kind, the kind where every muscle locks and the eyes go flat and bright and the attention narrows to a single point. Her hazel eyes caught the kitchen light, and for 1 second they were gold, pure hazel gold, and her head tilted 2 degrees toward him in a motion that was not a decision. It was a wolf tracking something warm. Grant saw it. He saw all of it. The gold, the tilt, the predator precision of her attention, and something in his chest made a sound that wasn't a sound, and his hands went very carefully still in the water. Karen started. Grant handed her the next plate and said nothing. His hands were shaking under the suds where she couldn't see. "That went well," he said. "Too well. My mother has started a dinner calendar." "I noticed. Marcus called you his future brother-in-law when you were in the bathroom." Grant's hands paused in the water, just for a second. Then they resumed. "I can talk to him," Darcy said. "Tell him to—" "Don't." Grant looked at her, gray eyes, steady, the mask back in place, but thinner now, threadbare in a way it hadn't been at the start of the evening. "Let him have it. It makes him happy." "It makes him happy," Karen said. "It makes us happy. She is 6 inches away, and she smells like rosemary and turpentine and Heidelberg ink, and I am not coping. I need everyone to know that I am not coping." Grant kept washing. He was thinking about a Tuesday afternoon 3 years ago when Darcy had been setting type and a strand of hair had fallen across her face and she'd blown it away without looking up, her lips pursed, her eyes on the letters, and he'd been holding a coffee he'd brought her and he'd forgotten to put it down. He'd stood there for a full minute holding a cooling coffee and watching her blow hair out of her face, and he'd thought, very clearly, "Oh, that's what this is." And then he'd put the coffee on the bench and left, and sat in his truck for 10 minutes with his hands on the steering wheel and Karen saying, "Yes, yes, finally, yes." And he had not gone back inside. That was the day he'd decided that loving her from the edges was enough. It had been a lie then, it was a lie now. "Okay," Darcy said. "We let Marcus have it." They finished the dishes. Their fingers touched over the last plate. Both of them pulled back at the same time, the same speed, the same flinch, the same electric acknowledgement of the thing they were not discussing. Grant drove home alone. Darcy stood in the kitchen with a dish towel pressed against her chest and her heart doing the thing she still refused to name. "You're not acting," Bramble said. "You know that, right? At no point during this evening were you acting. I was there. I watched. You were 100% genuine from the moment he walked in wearing that sweater, and you forgot how doors work." "I didn't forget how doors work. You pulled instead of pushed. You've had that door for 26 years. Darcy put the dish towel down. She went to bed. She did not sleep for a long time. 3. The month. The gifts started on Monday. A hand-knitted scarf from Marcus's mate's mother in pack colors. A jar of peach preserves from the territory's oldest family with a note that said, "We always knew." A carved wooden wolf, 2 wolves actually, sitting side by side, from the pack's woodworker, delivered without comment. By Wednesday, the count was 14. 14 gifts, Darcy said, standing in the press shop surrounded by preserves and knitwear and one deeply unsettling cross-stitch that read, "The Lock Mercer Union, a blessing upon the pack," in elaborate Gothic lettering. In 3 days, for a fake relationship. The pack has sent us a cross-stitch, Grant. Someone stitched our surnames together with a blessing. This is a needlepoint commitment. Grant was reorganizing the shelves, because Grant was always reorganizing something, because Grant showed care through order, and she had known this about him for years, and was only now understanding what it meant. "The woodworker spent real hours on those wolves," he said, examining the carving. "Good detail work. The smaller one has your eyes." "It does," Bramble said. because the woodworker saw what you refused to see. By Friday, the count was 21. Someone's grandmother had sent a hand-embroidered pillowcase set, his and hers, with small wolves stitched in the corners. The pack's eldest beta had delivered a bottle of ceremonial wine with a card that read, "For the bonding night," which Darcy had hidden in a drawer so fast she'd pulled a muscle. "We have been given bonding night wine," she told Grant, in the voice of a woman reporting a natural disaster. "Do we send it back?" "We can't send it back. It's ceremonial. Returning ceremonial wine is a pack-level insult." "So we keep the bonding night wine." "We keep the bonding night wine." "We drink the bonding night wine," Bramble said, "on a Thursday, with dinner, while sitting 4 inches from the man whose shoulders are doing that load-bearing thing. And we see what happens. We are not drinking the bonding night wine. Coward." The month continued. Every Thursday dinner, every pack event, every Sunday walk that Marcus somehow always had to cancel at the last minute, leaving Darcy and Grant alone on the trail with the whole forest smelling like cedar and pine and the specific warmth of a man walking close enough that their shoulders almost touched. She learned things. Small things. The kind you only learn when you're paying the particular attention that fake dating requires, which is the same attention real dating requires, which is the same attention she'd been paying for years but had categorized under different headings. She learned that Grant's laugh, when it happened, rare, quiet, a single exhaled breath that caught in his throat before it arrived, was the funniest thing about him, because it surprised him every time, as if his own amusement was an uninvited guest he kept finding in his house. She learned that he talked to the Heidelberg. Not to her, not to Bramble, not to anyone who could hear, to the press itself, under his breath while feeding paper. "Easy," he'd say when the roller caught. "There you go." As if it were a horse, as if everything mechanical was alive to him and deserved patience. She'd stood behind a shelf and listened to him coax a paper jam loose with the voice he used on skittish animals, and she'd thought, "Oh, that's why. That's why it's him. Because he is careful with things that can't ask him to be careful." She learned that his wolf surfaced in specific moments, not when she was looking, when she wasn't. She'd turn back and catch the amber in his eyes fading, or the absolute stillness of his posture, or the way his head had tilted toward her without his body following, as if his wolf had leaned in and his human had caught it too late. She learned that he carried tension in his hands, fists at his sides, curled tight, the tendons visible across his knuckles. And then he'd see her looking, and he'd uncurl them, deliberately, finger by finger, as if reminding himself that open was an option. She remembered the afternoon the press jammed, not this time, the first time, 2 years ago. Grant had come in to drop off coffee and found her crying into the feed tray because the roller was cracked and the repair would cost more than she'd made in 3 months. He hadn't said anything. He'd put the coffee on the bench, taken off his jacket, and spent 4 hours on the floor with a wrench and a YouTube tutorial. And when the roller turned again, he'd stood up with grease on his jaw and said, "Your R tray is still backwards." And she had known. Not suspected. Known. The way you know a typeface by its weight. Not by looking at the name, but by the pressure of each letter on the page. And Grant was watching her too, though she didn't know it. He noticed when she ran her thumb along the edge of a freshly pressed page, the small, unconscious gesture of a woman checking her own work by feel. He noticed the way she squared her shoulders before picking up the phone, every time, as if the phone required armor. He noticed that she hummed while inking the press. No melody, just a low, steady note, the sound of a woman who forgot she wasn't alone because she was doing the thing she loved. "You are staring," Karen said, on a Sunday walk, when Darcy was 20 paces ahead and the afternoon light was catching her hair. "I'm not staring." You have been watching her walk for 4 minutes. Your feet stopped. You are standing in a forest watching a woman walk away from you, and your feet stopped because the view was too good to interrupt with movement. That is staring. I was looking at the trail. The trail is behind her. You were looking at her shoulders. You are in love with him, Bramble said, on a Thursday evening after the 5th dinner, as Darcy watched Grant's taillights disappear down the road. You have been in love with him since you were 17. What you are doing now is admitting it. We're pretending. You are pretending. He is not pretending. I am not pretending. The pack is not pretending. The only person pretending is you, and you are doing it badly, and everyone can see it, and the cross-stitch lady saw it from across the room. Bramble. And she stitched our names together in Gothic lettering. She did not stitch temporary arrangement. She stitched blessing upon the pack. Because she has eyes. The pack gathering was on a Saturday, 3 weeks into the month. It was a bonfire, the annual autumn one, the big one, the one where the whole pack came and the alpha spoke and there was dancing and firelight and the kind of warmth that makes you forget you're performing because the performance has become indistinguishable from the truth. Darcy wore the green dress again. Grant wore the charcoal sweater. They stood by the fire, and his hand found the small of her back the way it always did now. Not reaching, not asking, just arriving. The way a hand arrives at a doorknob or a pen, muscle memory. As if the small of her back were a place he'd always been and had only just been given permission to return to. "Dance with me," Marcus said, appearing beside them with 2 drinks and the grin of a brother who was enjoying this significantly more than the situation warranted. "Marcus, we don't need to—" "I'm not asking you. I'm asking Grant. It's tradition. The alpha dances with the new pack member's partner to welcome them." "I'm not a new pack member. I'm pretending to be—" But Grant was already stepping forward, taking the drink from Marcus and looking at Darcy with an expression she couldn't read. "One dance," he said, not to Marcus, to her. She took his hand. His palm was warm and dry and larger than she expected, which was absurd because she'd seen his hands 1,000 times, but seeing and holding were different activities, the way knowing and admitting were different activities, and the difference was the size of the Grand Canyon and approximately as difficult to cross. They danced. Not well. Neither of them was a dancer, and the fact that they were both pretending this was a casual thing while also being acutely aware of every point of contact between their bodies made the dancing worse, not better. But the fire was warm, and the music was slow, and his hand was at her waist, and hers was on his shoulder, and they were close, closer than the type trays, closer than the kitchen, closer than any of the distances they'd been maintaining by mutual unspoken agreement. His hand was large on her waist. She could feel each finger, the deliberate pressure of a palm that was trying very hard to touch exactly the right amount, not too firm, not too light, not possessive, not distant, and failing, because the hand kept tightening in small involuntary contractions that said something his mouth would never say. "His hand is doing a thing," Bramble observed. "The thing where it wants to pull you closer and he won't let it. It's the most romantic and most pathetic thing I've ever witnessed, and I have strong feelings about it." She could feel his heartbeat through his chest. It was fast. "Your heart's going," she said. "I know. Is that part of the act?" He looked down at her. The firelight caught his eyes and the gray was gone, replaced entirely by amber, warm and steady and unhidden. Not a flash this time, not hidden. His wolf was right at the surface, looking at her through his eyes, and his wolf was not pretending, and had never been pretending, and was, in fact, the most honest thing about him. "No," he said, "that's not part of the act." His voice had dropped. Half an octave, maybe more, the register shift that happened when the wolf was close to the surface and the man had stopped holding it back. She felt the lower pitch in her sternum. She felt it in places she was not going to inventory at a public pack event. And he saw her react. He saw her go still, that specific, held breath stillness, her pupils widening, her body locking into the attentive freeze of a wolf that has just been addressed by something it recognizes. Her hazel eyes had gone gold again, and this time she didn't notice, but he did. Bramble, right at the surface, staring back at him through Darcy's eyes with an expression that was not smug for once, but naked and direct and absolutely certain. "She sees us," Karen said. "She sees us, and her wolf is looking right at me, and I am not coping," Karen said. "I am not equipped for direct eye contact with her wolf. I need to sit down. We cannot sit down. We are dancing." "The song's almost over," Darcy said. "I know," Grant said, and didn't let go. She should have said something. She should have laughed, or deflected, or made a joke about the dance, or the sweater, or the 14 gifts, or the Gothic lettering cross-stitch. Instead, she stood in the circle of his arms with her hand on his shoulder and the firelight between them and said nothing, because the nothing was the most honest thing she had. The song ended. They didn't move. Marcus, watching from across the bonfire, turned to their mother and said, "They have absolutely no idea, do they?" Their mother sipped her drink. "They'll figure it out. Give them until Thursday." "And if they don't?" "Then I'll seat them even closer. I have a plan involving a 2-person bench and a very small dessert table." Grant walked her to her car afterward. The bonfire was embers behind them. The parking field was dark and cold and smelled like pine smoke and the end of something. "That was a good dance," she said, which was the most inadequate sentence she had ever spoken. "Yeah." He was standing by her car door. His hands were in his pockets. His jaw was set in the way that meant he was holding something back, and she could see the amber fading from his eyes like a tide going out. The wolf retreating because the man had decided the moment was over. Except she didn't want the moment to be over. She reached up and fixed his collar. It didn't need fixing. The gesture was entirely invented. A reason to put her fingers near his throat, to feel the warmth of his skin above the charcoal sweater, to watch his eyes go wide and still and amber again at the contact. "Your collar was crooked," she said. "It wasn't." "I know." She got in her car. She drove home. She sat in the driveway for 10 minutes with her hands on the steering wheel, and Bramble saying, "That was the most transparent excuse for physical contact I have ever witnessed, and I am so proud of you." And she did not argue, because Bramble was right, and the collar had been fine, and she had touched him anyway. The near miss happened in the press shop. It was a Wednesday, 3 weeks and 4 days into the month, 6 days before the arrangement was supposed to end. Grant was helping her with a print run, feeding paper into the Heidelberg while she set the type, and the press jammed. She reached past him to clear it. Her body crossed his. Her face was close to his neck, close enough to smell cedar and wool, and the thing underneath, the thing she'd been cataloging for years, warm skin and pine soap, and something that was just him, just Grant, the warm, particular scent of the man who reorganized her shelves and refilled her water and stood in the back of every room she was in and watched her with the patient attention of someone who had all the time in the world and none of it to waste. She pulled back. He didn't. For 3 seconds, they were face to face. His hand was on the press. Her hand was on his arm. The ink on her fingers was leaving marks on his sleeve, and neither of them cared. His eyes were amber, fully, openly, the gray completely gone, and his breathing was shallow, and his mouth was right there, and she could feel cairn at the surface of him the way you feel heat through a wall, present and close and barely contained. "Now," Bramble said, not smug, not performing, for the first time, utterly serious. Now, Darcy. Someone knocked on the shop door. They broke apart. Grant went back to the press. Darcy went back to the type. Neither of them mentioned the 3 seconds. Neither of them mentioned the ink on his sleeve. Neither of them mentioned the fact that his hands were shaking and hers were steady, and both of these things were lies. His hands always shook when she was close, and her steadiness was the most deliberate thing about her. The month had 6 days left. The problem was no longer that they were pretending. The problem was that they had run out of pretend. Chapter 4. The Last Day. The month ended on a Tuesday, and neither of them mentioned it. Darcy was at the Heidelberg. Grant was at the shelves. The press shop was warm with afternoon light and the smell of ink and the very loud silence of 2 people who were both aware that the arrangement expired at midnight, and neither of whom had said the words, "So we should probably stop." She said a line of type, checked it. Said another. "The R tray," he started, "is fine. It's backwards. It's in my system." "Your system is—" "Grant, if you say backwards, I will print something rude and mail it to you." He almost smiled. The architecture of one, assembled and hovering. He went back to the shelves. "Say something," Bramble said. "The month is over. He is standing right there. His wolf has been staring at me all afternoon, like a man watching the last sunset before the apocalypse." "Say something." "There's nothing to say. The arrangement is over. We go back to normal." Normal. Normal is you staring at his shoulders while pretending to count pica. Normal is him bringing coffee on Wednesdays and leaving before you can thank him properly. You want that normal? Darcy didn't answer. She set another line of type and pressed too hard, and the letter cracked, and she said a word that would have made the cross-stitch woman reach for her needle. Grant looked up. "You okay?" "Fine. Broken E. I'll reset." He came over. He always came over. He stood beside her at the press and looked at the cracked letter and said, "I have a spare E in the back." And his hand was on the press frame 6 inches from hers, and his cedar and wool scent was everywhere, and his eyes were gray and steady, and the amber was right at the edges, and cairn was right at the surface. And neither the wolf nor the man was pretending anymore, and the only thing keeping them apart was the fact that neither had said so out loud, and Marcus walked in. "Quick question," Marcus said, with the cheerful energy of a man delivering a live grenade. "The engagement party. Mum wants to know, garden or the Great Hall?" The press shop went very quiet. "The what?" Darcy said. "The engagement party. Yours. The one Mum's been planning since week 2. Marcus was enjoying this. He was enjoying this the way a wolf enjoys a hunt. Not the catching, the running. "She's ordered flowers. There's a 3-tier cake with little wolves on top. The cross-stitch woman has started a new piece. I believe it's a family crest, with wolves, interlocking. It's very detailed." "Marcus, there is no engagement." "There is definitely an engagement, or there's about to be, or there should be." He ticked points off on his fingers. "You danced at the bonfire, and neither of you let go when the song ended. You fixed his collar in the parking field for no reason. You have been coming into this shop every morning 40 minutes earlier than you used to, because that's when he arrives to reorganize your type trays, and you think nobody has noticed, but I am the Alpha King and I notice everything. And also the woodworker told me." "The woodworker? He has a window that faces the shop. He sees you two through it every morning. He says it's better than television." Grant, who had been standing very still through this entire exchange with the expression of a man being read his own autopsy report, said, "The arrangement ends today." Marcus looked at him, then at Darcy, then back at Grant. "Right," Marcus said. "The arrangement, the fake one, the one where you've been looking at my sister like she personally invented sunlight. That arrangement." "Marcus, the one where you reorganize her shelves and bring her coffee and dance with her at bonfires and your eyes go amber every time she laughs which, by the way, the entire pack has noticed, including the woodworker who carved those wolves and the cross-stitch woman who has personally stitched your surnames together with a blessing, Marcus. And you're going to stand here and tell me it was fake? Silence. The kind that fills a room the way water fills a glass, slowly, from the bottom, until there's no space left. Grant's hands were at his sides. His fingers were curled, not fists, the architecture of fists. Darcy could see the effort it was taking him not to look at her, which was its own kind of answer. Marcus softened. The grin faded into something warmer. "I'll tell Mum to hold the cake," he said quietly. "But Grant, figure it out, both of you. I'm tired of watching this from the outside." He left. The door closed. The press shop was quiet. Grant stared at the type trays. Darcy stared at the press. The cracked E sat between them like evidence. "We should," she started. "Yeah," he said. Neither of them moved. "Tell him," Bramble said. "Tell her," Karen said, at the same time, in the same register. Earnest, desperate, done with patience. Darcy turned to face him. He turned to face her. 4 feet of press shop floor between them and 6 years underneath it, and neither of them breathing quite right. "Was any of it real?" she said. He looked at her. The mask fell. Not dramatically, not in pieces. It just stopped. The composure, the best friend mode, the careful distance of a man who had been standing at the right distance for years. All of it went quiet. And what was underneath was not managed or composed or careful. It was just him. A man in a charcoal sweater who had been bringing her coffee on Wednesdays for 3 years and had never once told her why. "All of it," he said. "Every dinner, every walk, every dance. The R-tray, the coffee, all of it." "Yes," Karen said. One word. The most honest sound in the room. "The dishes?" "The dishes. The thing where you refill my water glass without me asking?" "I've been doing that since before the arrangement." "I know. I noticed." She looked at him. "I noticed every time, Grant." Something happened to his face. Not the managed expression, and not the composed mask, and not the architecture of a smile. Something unbuilt and open and slightly afraid. The expression of a man who has just been told that the thing he thought was invisible was seen. "Since when?" she said. "Since you blew your hair out of your face while setting type, and I stood there holding a cooling coffee for a full minute because I forgot how arms work." She laughed, short, surprised, warm. "I know that afternoon. You left and sat in your truck for 10 minutes. You saw that?" "I see everything, Grant. I run a letterpress. My entire job is paying attention to detail." "She saw the truck," Karen said, with a kind of stunned reverence. "She saw us sit in the truck. She has known. She has known." "I printed something," she said. She reached into her apron pocket, because of course she'd printed it, because she'd come in at 4 in the morning and set the type letter by letter, backward, because that was how she said things when her mouth couldn't. She unfolded the cream paper and held it up. 3 lines pressed deep in her best ink. "Not convenient. Never convenient. Chosen." He read it. He read it again. His jaw loosened, his hands uncurled. "You set type at 4 in the morning," he said. "I set type when I have things to say." "You have someone to say them to." "I know. I'm looking at him." She stepped forward. She put her hands on his face, both sides, ink-stained fingers on his jaw, and she kissed him. Not hard, not desperate, slow and certain and chosen, the way she did everything, deliberately, with her whole self. His hands came up, open, shaking, and one went to her waist and one went to the back of her neck. And he kissed her back, with the quiet, helpless gravity of a man who had finally stopped standing at the right distance. Worth it, Cairn said. Quiet, honest, meant with his entire body. Every second. Obviously, Bramble said, with the bone-deep satisfaction of a wolf whose patience had outlasted her human stubbornness. Obviously. Chapter 5. The Real One. The Thursday dinner happened anyway. Darcy called her mother and said, "The arrangement was fake. We made it up. There was no relationship." Her mother said, "I know, dear." "You what?" "Darling, you are a terrible liar. You've been in love with Grant since you were 17. The fake dating was the most transparent scheme in the history of this family." "Then why did you go along with it?" "Because I've been waiting for you two to figure it out, and the fake dating was faster than waiting another 6 years. You sent suitors? You sent Aldous Pemberton? With a genealogical chart?" "Yes, well, sometimes a person needs to be reminded what she doesn't want before she can admit what she does." "You sent the butterknife genealogist on purpose?" "I sent 4 suitors on purpose, each one more unsuitable than the last. I was going to escalate to Lord Finch's boy, the one who collects beetles, but you broke before I got there." Darcy stared at the phone. Across the room, Grant had stopped pretending to organize type trays and was openly listening. "You engineered this," Darcy said. "I facilitated an outcome. There's a difference. Is the engagement party back on?" Darcy looked at Grant. He was looking back with his hands still on the R tray, and his gray eyes warm with amber, and his mouth doing the thing, the architecture of a smile, assembled and built, and this time lived in. "Yes," she said, "the engagement party is back on." "Wonderful. I'll tell the cross-stitch woman. She already knows, doesn't she? She started the new piece last Tuesday. She has excellent instincts." The marking happened 3 days later, in the press shop. Early morning, gold light through the windows falling across the type trays and the ink, and the two of them in the space where they had always been. He kissed her first this time. Slow, his hand on her jaw, his thumb tracing the ink stain on her cheekbone. She turned her head, offered her neck, the curve of her shoulder, bare where her shirt had slipped. Deliberate, chosen. Her eyes open. "Are you sure?" he said. "Grant, I printed you a declaration at 4 in the morning on my best stock. I'm sure." He laughed against her skin. One breath, then the mark. Careful, precise, placed exactly where she'd offered it. Her hand gripped his sweater, the charcoal one, the first one, and held. The bond settled, not with fanfare, with warmth, the way a room settles when you light a fire that's been laid for a long time. The wood was there, the kindling was there, and all that was needed was the match. Cairn said nothing. Didn't need to. The earnest, patient wolf, who had been telling the truth all along, had nothing left to say. Bramble settled and was, for the first time, genuinely quiet. Just present, the way a wolf is present when the thing it has been guarding has finally arrived. Everyone came to dinner. Marcus brought wine, not the ceremonial bonding night wine which Grant and Darcy had opened the previous evening, sitting on the press shop floor among the type trays, which was not how ceremonial wine was supposed to be consumed, but was, they agreed, the only way that mattered. Their mother brought the good plates. The cross-stitch woman brought a new piece, finally, in capital letters, no further commentary, which Darcy hung above the type trays because it was the most honest thing anyone had ever stitched. Grant sat beside her, their chairs close, his hand on her knee, her hand over his, neither of them flinching. Marcus raised his glass. "I would like it on the record that I have known about this since Grant was 22 and Darcy was 17, and I have been the most patient alpha king in the history of this pack." "Your restraint," Darcy said. "You called him your future brother-in-law at the first dinner." "That was restraint. You don't want to know what I called him before the first dinner. Grant smiled. A real one. The kind that starts in the chest and arrives without permission and doesn't leave. And I would like it on the record, Darcy added, looking at her mother, that our mother sent 4 deliberately terrible suitors to force my hand, including a man with a genealogical chart and a butter knife. Aldous was a lovely young man. Aldous was interested in the hydrangeas. I never said the plan was flawless. Their mother, cutting the lamb with the precision of a woman who had orchestrated everything and wanted no credit, said, "I'm sure I don't know what you mean." Darcy leaned into Grant. His arm came around her shoulders. Cedar and wool and warm skin. "Told you," Bramble murmured. "One last time. Quiet, content, done." The dinner was long and warm and loud and real, and when they left together, and the distance between them was 0. Hold the person, but let them hold you back.